Welcome back to The Ethical Entrepreneur, a 21-day speaker series to inspire you to build better businesses. I'm Marika Timmers, and like you, I'm committed to creating a business that is a force for good. And today I'm speaking with Tim Jones, who helps businesses do just that. Tim helps entrepreneurs and business owners tap into their purpose-fueled performance. His consulting, coaching, and training programs are specially designed for those that want to use their skills to achieve meaningful goals in life and work. And his business is one of New Zealand's founding B Corps. He's also a B Corp ambassador. Welcome, Tim.
Hello, kia ora. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. I'm excited to talk all things purpose today with you.
I reckon. Why not?
So purpose is a term that we've used quite a lot through this summit, but to be perfectly honest, I've never really defined what that is because I assumed that it meant slightly different things to different people, and I'm personally okay with a bit of ambiguity. But given that your area of specialism is purpose-focused consulting, I'm keen to know, what's your definition of purpose?
Right, and no pressure. Yeah. No, I mean you're 100% on the money, and that when I first kind of connected to my lack of purpose, which was the spotlight for me to work out what this thing is. I mean, I've frequently referred to it like when you're first connecting to purpose, it's like trying to explain the taste and smell of the number 3, because it is really ethereal. You know, so few people even get taught, or there's nothing in school really, well certainly not when I was at school, about purpose and meaning and doing stuff that fulfills you. It's just about go and get a job that you like, maybe, that you can tolerate.
Nor at business school, right? I have a business degree. They didn't teach us purpose there either.
Exactly. I mean, that is changing. We can maybe talk about that a bit later. But yeah, it took me 6 years to get my head around it, of research to try and work out, well, what is it? How do you put it in a box and define it? And it's kind of like the best way to describe it is actually just to go to the dictionary. So the dictionary describes purpose as something's reason for existing, and basically something's contribution. And really, that for me is the essence of purpose. And I'm part of a group called the Global Purpose Leaders, who I guess we're sort of 60 odd guardians of purpose who meet semi-regularly and sort of stroke our metaphorical beards and try and make sure that the word purpose isn't diluted, because it is diluted quite a lot. But on the individual level, the best way to think about it is you being the most authentic version of you, doing what you can, or giving what you can give the most of to humanity for the betterment of everyone. So it's kind of be the best version of you in service of others, and to the highest level that you can do. So contribution and be you. And typically it's being the truest version of you that's the hardest part, because not many people are actually their true selves.
That's right. Especially in business these days, right?
Massively in business, but just in general, unless you have done, it is the rare exception that a human will exit the education system and start their life being a massively authentic, true version of themselves, set on a path of greatness for them to contribute the most for humanity in a manner that is fulfilling to them. I don't meet many of those people. I mainly meet people who've been sent on a trajectory by their life, by school, by parents, by society, who have been shoehorned into something that they think they might be able to tolerate. And then, more broadly, we wonder why there's a mental health crisis. And it's like, well, when you look at the stats on the lack of meaning that people find in their day-to-day, work in particular, it's unsurprising that we don't, to me, it's surprising that we don't have a bigger mental health crisis.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that, your journey started with the lack of purpose. And I'm guessing that's also the case for a lot of your customers, right?
Yep, exactly that. I mean, I can't remember who said it, but, we only change when we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And you need to get to a point of exhaustion of, there's kind of two ways, actually. There's the longer term, and this, I guess, is where I actually get to make use of my history degree. Because in history, you talk about there's two types of causes. There's the long-term causes and the short-term causes. So the long-term causes might be, there was famine for 3 years, but the short-term cause was, someone said, this is rubbish, we're going to have a revolution. And it's the same with purpose. There's the slow burn of all the stuff that's going on in your life that you're just not aligned with. And this is where you sort of think about your head, heart, hand alignment. So what am I telling myself? What am I thinking? What does my heart feel to be true? But what am I actually doing, you know, kind of with my hand metaphorically? That can be a really slow burn. And then I think, you know, that's why we typically have the midlife crisis, because you've been tolerating a whole lot of stuff in your life that isn't stuff that is true to you, or things that you actually feel that you want to do. And then it kind of creeps up on you. For me, I had a slightly different experience, which is maybe less common generally, but I think in the South Island where I'm based was perhaps more common. It was the earthquakes, 2010, 2011, so 10th year anniversary. And then 2012, the birth of our daughter. My wife obviously did all the heavy lifting on that one. And essentially I had what's called a subconscious awakening. So if you have any form of trauma, so that can be, you know, the mental shakeup that a lot of people had down here in the earthquakes, or any kind of physical trauma or any near-death experience, it can trigger your subconscious to just basically come to the forefront. And it was kind of maybe probably a bit of both of those for me, but I really got to a point where one day I was standing in the operating theatre of a hospital, because my job used to be, I was a medical rep. I spent most of my days standing in an operating theatre in a hospital, making sure that an orthopedic or neurosurgeon provided the best outcome for a patient. And this one day, the surgeon was being mildly obnoxious to a lot of people in the operating theatre. And I just got to the point, like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't like the people I'm working for in terms of the companies, because there was some really, really like depths of corruption within the organizations and in the industry. And even within the surgical community, there were people doing things that suddenly it's like, this doesn't align with who I really am. So how have I got here? And is it Talking Heads, that song? I think it's Talking Heads, you know, you wake up one day in your beautiful house surrounded by your beautiful wife and you ask yourself, how did I get here? And it was just like, yeah, you've nailed it. It's like, how did I get here?
Yeah. And really that's why I was so compelled to do the speaker series at this time, because, you know, I think COVID has been a catalyst for a lot of people sitting in similar situations thinking, is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? Can I have more meaning and purpose in what I do on a day-to-day basis? Exactly
right. Because you need that existential threat to make you ponder on your existence. You know, when life's great, You don't want to stop and consider that life might stop being great. But when you're having a bad time, that's when you do some navel gazing. That's when you start asking, well, you know, am I on the right path? Am I doing as much as I could do? Should I have, you know, done that other job 10 years ago? Or should I not have done that degree? Or should I have gone and got that degree? All that stuff. And really that's the first part of the purpose journey, is you need that interruption, that kind of pattern interrupt your day-to-day life, for you to just sit up and go, hang on a minute, something doesn't feel great here. And then, you know, the second part is to then go and, you know, I think that's the benefit or the potential benefit globally that we have of COVID right now, is we've got a lot of people, you know, with a lot of time on their hands to have a think about life. And I think the positive that I hope we get on the back end of COVID, when it's under control, is going to be individual, which will lead to organizational, which will lead to the systemic change to ensure that we all live a better life.
Agreed. So yeah, I imagined when I decided to do this, a whole lot of people, you know, sitting at home, either unemployed or working from home, but contemplating that side gig, or even leaving and doing something else. But also a load of established business owners who had a really tough time last year. And in many places in the world, we're very lucky in New Zealand, but in many places in the world, still having a really tough time. And this purpose-led approach is not just to help you feel better and more aligned, because of course it does that, but it's also what we're hearing through a lot of speakers is it's a competitive advantage.
Totally. And I think there's two parts to that, because I guess without naming names, from a New Zealand perspective, Kiwis tuning in will know some of the bigger names of companies. I won't name drop them, but you know, when we went into lockdown here, it was pretty clearly stated by the government that only essential workers have to stay at work. And what I found really interesting was some companies who felt that they were essential to humanity, but were quickly told, actually, you're not essential for the running of our country in a crisis pandemic. And that, for me, really is the acid test of purpose, because purpose, organizational and individual purpose, are both, in terms of like the process you need to go through, are both very highly aligned. So as an organization, are we being true to ourselves? Are we being the best version of that we can be as an organization? And what contribution are we making? Now, there's an example. I won't name the name, but there is a company that makes a dog selfie phone attachment. So on the top of your phone, it basically has a cradle where it holds a tennis ball so that you can get a better selfie of your dog. Like, if that didn't exist, would we be in a better or a worse place as a species? When you sort of factor in all the ecological destruction that is occurring to make that product and the shipping of it, and then the fact that after, I don't know how many weeks, it's probably going to end up in landfill. Yeah. So I think the closer you can get to, well, ultimately, I think if you look at the path that we're kind of on, the modern consumer capitalist society that we've kind of built, there's a whole lot of stuff that we don't need, but the reason why we're buying it is because of the purpose void that we have in our lives. We fill that in the happiness trap by, if I get the new phone, or if I get the gadget or the widget or the thing, yes, you do have that immediate uplift. You do have that little sort of happiness spark, but it's the same as when you eat or drink really bad food. You have that kind of burst of energy, and then you have the massive drop. And it's this, this is the transition that I think COVID is going to really help us, get to, is the thing that you've got. Does humanity really need it? And if you haven't got something that humanity really needs, how do you start thinking about that? Because we're going to get to a point where I think increasingly the pressure is going to be on brands, but when consumers basically, I guess like cigarettes are the great example, where we've been through this kind of transition where 50 years ago your GP would be prescribing you cigarettes if you had a tickly cough. Now they are persona non grata. It's like we struggle to see how you fit into our future. And I just think there's going to be a lot of other products or categories where people start going, hang on a minute, you cause more destruction to the planet in your existence than any positivity, any happiness, or any good that you might provide on the other side of the ledger.
I hope so. Yeah.
Can we afford to have you around? So I think but yeah, it's a massive competitive advantage. If you look at, there's so much data and evidence from such kind of left-leaning hippie groups as PwC, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, like all those, groups. There's just so much evidence. And I guess conscious capitalism really has led this over the last sort of 10, 20 years. Is the evidence is there that, businesses that have a clear mission, that are working to make the world a better place, will outperform in the long term. And I guess it's kind of obvious when you think about it, because for me, I kind of bring it back to if we're sitting around a campfire right now, and most of us have done our contributions. So those of us who are maybe, I'm 6'4" and 120 kilos, so I'm probably pretty good at wrestling some kind of beast to the ground so that we can have dinner tonight. Or I might have helped, reconstruct one of the huts for the village. And I don't know, you might have gone and got some sticks and helped build the fire. But then our other mate, I don't know, Dave, he comes in, kicks the fire over and throws all our food into the river. It's not long before you have to have a conversation with Dave and say, Dave, you're not helping us survive here. So you either need to change how you operate, or we're going to throw you out of the tribe. And I think it does come down to being that simple. It's like, I like a bit of old school hip hop. Public Enemy. No, a tribe called Jurassic 5. We'll get there in the end. They have a song. You're either part of the problem or part of the solution. What's your contribution to life? It's that simple.
Yeah. So you're known here in New Zealand as the Grow Good guy. How does purpose help businesses grow?
Great question. How doesn't it help you grow is going to be the easiest thing to answer. But I guess it's there's two parts to that, because it's growing good, growth for the sake of growth, just so that we can add more, digits onto our spreadsheet of financial, superiority at the end of the year. Great. Yes, purpose will help you achieve that to a point. But beyond that, it's realigning your business to look at other goals other than just the financial. But again, like all the data, all the evidence suggests, the best evidence we've seen was from the UK B Lab, which is the organization that kind of certifies the B Corps globally in the UK, did a report on retail B corporations versus their non-B Corp retail competitors, and they outperformed the market like by a decent factor. So there is an economic advantage, and really that's one of the key ways to kind of sell B Corp and purpose in is if you just care about making more money, then you should look at bringing purpose into your organization, because purpose has so many levers internally in terms of employee, so employee engagement, retaining staff, attracting the best new staff, particularly the younger generations coming through. All the data, all the evidence is showing that if you don't have a clearly defined mission that's, or in some way you're making the world a better place, you're going to lose the best talent. So certainly internally. Externally, in terms of customers, getting better, higher paying customers, will typically gravitate towards the purpose-driven brands. Again, so much evidence, out there that consumers are looking for brands that give a damn and that can prove that they're certainly not destroying the planet, but they're going some way to, mitigating damage. And I guess the last area is when you look at and I think for me, this is the kind of the really exciting part, is when big finance is starting to look at the benefits of purpose, you kind of know that you've won the war. So, Larry Fink, who runs BlackRock Investments, I think it's like over $6 trillion of funds money, under investment globally. He's basically said to all the businesses that they fund, if you don't start considering your social and environmental impact as well as your financial, then you won't be seeing money from us. A lot of people kind of go, yeah, that's great. He said that, but who's he still investing in? But the very fact that that guy has stated that publicly, multiple times, that's the thing. I've got a contact of mine in one of the banks in New Zealand. He's in charge of sort of capital investments for one of the big banks in New Zealand. And he's saying that increasingly when companies are looking for investment, one of the first, kind of rounds of questions they're asked is on their social and environmental performance. So, and I think it was Anheuser-Busch who make the Budweiser beer in the US. I just saw on LinkedIn today that they have been given basically cheaper credit that is linked to their environmental performance. And there's some big movements around that in Europe. Danone was also a recipient of that, and there's some European funding that was, the cheaper credit was reliant on them maintaining and increasing their B Corp score, I believe. So. Right. When the money people get it, like, I don't know, it's not being rude to the bean counters and accountants, but if they can get the purpose argument, there's hope, because typically they're the hardest ones to convince.
Absolutely.
We should try this hippie weirdo, purposey thing that I can't, nail down really easily.
So you've sold all the bean counters, the accountants, the financiers, but having worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs and business execs, what do you think is the biggest barrier to embedding purpose in your customers' lives and in their businesses?
I guess it still comes down. Yeah, I mean, it always comes down to getting it across senior leadership. If a business, most like owner operated businesses, or businesses where there is a small maybe advisory board where they're probably capped at a few $1 million, where pretty much if the CEO wants to do it, they can do it. Those are typically the easiest businesses to sort of support, because if the CEO is on board, everything will happen. It's the challenge is when the CEO, particularly in bigger companies, when you might have a CEO, you might have a board, you've got like layers of senior management or senior leadership where you have to start joining the dots. And this is the advice I give to all the people who come to me and say, hey, look, I really want to look at doing B Corp inside, for our business, but, I haven't got the CEO support yet, or, senior leadership just don't think it's worthwhile. And the key to, like I say, my background's in sales, and the key with sales is to identify the challenge or the opportunity that the person you're trying to work with has, and align what you have with what they are trying to solve. And fundamentally in life, people are driven by two emotions, fear or desire. So what you need to do is understand the person above you in the hierarchy. What are the three things that are keeping them awake at night? Then create the argument as to how purpose will help them solve one of those problems. So for most companies, it's going to be, well, we want to grow more, or we are losing employees, or we can't fill our the vacancies that we have, or we're losing market share. Cool. This is how purpose or being a B Corp will help plug that gap. And that's where I find typically most of the people who are wanting to bring the purpose into the organization, they're not always great salespeople. And so they, and I think this is typically or really been the challenge for sustainability more broadly over the last 20 years is, we can sometimes be quite vitriolic, maybe, you know, it's like, can't you see that we need to have this solution? Like, you are idiots, just become a B Corp or do a sustainability report. Can you not see how urgent this is? Oddly enough, people don't like hanging out with those people. So the key is to like just take a step back, work out what it is your company are trying to achieve, and then say, hey, look, has anyone considered maybe how purpose could be a lens that we look through this, where we might actually solve this problem that we haven't solved for 5 years? You know, and then build the conversation that way. And that's, I guess, really that's where I help most people initially. It's just how to pitch it in the right way to the right person, to say, look, like, just give it a go. You haven't tried this. You know, you've tried all these other ideas.
And that goes the other way. It goes the other way too, right? So if you are the business owner and you're trying to engage your team in purpose, the similar concepts apply.
Yep, exactly that. And it kind of is like a, you know, top down, bottom up approach in many ways. And typically what you'll find, it's always easiest if there's someone in the senior leadership team or the owner or the CEO who's like, hey, I'm setting the strategic direction, or, you know, as a board or as a leadership team, we've seen that this is the trend that's coming. But then bringing the team along the journey is the key, because if just the senior leadership team do it, it's like, you know, for the employees, it's, oh yeah, just another thing that we're going to try for a year, you know, fantastic.
How believable. Yeah.
It's like, oh, didn't we do that 3 years ago? I've got the t-shirt somewhere. And if it's bottom up, it doesn't always break through to that top barrier. So the best organizations who really, really embed this really, really well is they have the, permission from senior leadership to say, hey, look, and you know, this is the thing with organizational purpose at this level. You don't know how it's going to turn out because you've never been there. And it's what I call the purpose horizon. You know, you can see this far in terms of your purpose right now, but when you get to this next higher level of purpose, you're going to be able to see, you know, another 20 Ks further than you could before. And so it does involve a bit of a leap of faith to go, look, we're going to try this thing. All the evidence suggests that we're going to be in a better place. We think it's going to be over there, but this is going to be exciting. And so giving the team then the sort of the latitude to say, cool, let's go and try stuff. And that's, you know, this is like the secret weapon. This is where purpose becomes a true secret weapon in organizational, performance, is bringing your team on that journey to let them bring their truest version of themselves to work to help you transform your company, to start solving big problems that they're passionate about, that your customers are passionate about, that all of a sudden everyone's like, do you know what? I quite like turning up to work because I can see that I'm making a difference. And again, it's like coming back to that tribe. A good mate of mine, Zach Mercurio, who does similar work to me in the US, you know, he refers back to, it was kind of like that first industrial revolution. Like prior to that, if I was the shoemaker, you come to me for a new pair of shoes or to fix your shoes, I fix them, I give them back to you, and I see you every day walking around in the shoes that I made for you. And I have that level of connection, and I do good work because I know that I'm going to see you. Whereas in the modern world, you know, the employee can sometimes be so disconnected from the impact on the end user that they just become a number. They just become, something on a ledger on a spreadsheet. And so bringing back that level of engagement and connection and the meaning, like why do I do what I do? How does that impact another human? It's so vital. And you cannot underestimate the feeling that you can create in a company when they really, really grasp hold of that. This is why it's such a hard thing to sell, because it's like, hey, I've got a machine here. It's a widget machine, and every company I've put this into increases their efficiency by 10%, which for you means a return on investment of X by X years. Purpose is like, look, if we nail this, if your team will come on board, if you do this really, really well, you might even triple that. But I can't guarantee it because it's humans, it's emotions, it's minds, it's market forces and all that kind of stuff. So it's hard, but the companies that are nailing it are doing really, really well.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, there is that research and that proof now to have enough case studies to make that case.
Exactly that.
I love how you mentioned earlier the issue with sales, because my experience of a lot of purpose-led leaders is this ickiness around sales. Traditionally, and this is a mass generalization, sales has been fraught with unethical tactics. And so for a lot of people, it feels slimy. What can anyone who has an issue with selling do to overcome that?
So 100% on the money. And I guess it's like that's the other part of my business. So I do the purpose work, but I also do sales training and coaching for the businesses that are already doing good. And 100% right. Like people don't like selling, and the main reason for that is because most of the salespeople that most people meet in their life are rubbish salespeople who use unethical tactics. So I guess like it's going to be obvious who the two main, or sort of groups of people are that you will have mostly come across. It's when you buy a house and when you buy a car. Those are typically the big investments that most humans make, where they have protracted in, I guess, discussions with a salesperson, and mostly they are really bad interactions. And so the first thing to get your head around is most of the salespeople that you have met have not been great. So don't use that as your kind of, benchmark for how you should be performing. That's the first thing. The second thing, and the reframe that I give to everyone is, right, what is the product or service that you have? Okay, it's product X, fantastic. And you've done the work, and you know that this is making a positive contribution to society, humanity, the planet in some way. Yes, fantastic, right. It is your duty, therefore, to ensure that every person who might need to know about this knows about this. Because if you don't, what happens to the state of the planet, the community, society, whatever it is that you're trying to influence? So just getting really, really clear that, and this is the really interesting link between purpose and sales. Sales done well, ethically, with a product or service that humans or the planet needs is actually the ultimate act of service. And purpose is service. It's doing something for, you're doing something for someone else to help them achieve what they want to achieve. Like I said earlier, but people are driven by fear or desire. So if you've got a product that can either help someone achieve what they want to achieve more quickly, or you're going to stop them failing in what they're trying to achieve, which is where the selling purpose into the organization comes in. That's all you're doing. You're not making them buy something that they don't want. That's unethical selling. It's like they are trying to maybe change the world too. You have something that will help them do that. You should be on the phone 24/7 to make sure that every human that needs to know about it knows about it. And that all comes down to mindset. And that's when I do my sales coaching, I start with purpose. So even for purpose-driven people, it's getting the lens of purpose on sales. Make this connection that purpose as you've seen it, like I'm a purposeful person, I've got a purposeful business, but connect that to selling. Because there's a little switch you need to flick there. And then the second one is mindset. And this is the really interesting thing. Like even highly paid sales professionals in very large organizations, they also have mental hangups around sales and selling. So it's not unnatural to not like asking another human for some money. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess it's like don't believe all the salespeople you've met. Understand that you have to get whatever you've got there out to as many people. That is your duty. That's your purpose. And thirdly, don't worry about the mental hangups. Everyone has them, but you can get rid of them.
Perfect. Love it. We've got time for one more question. And this is a question that I asked a number of my speakers. Given all of your experience in consulting today, if you were like our audience and embarking on a new business idea, or looking to improve, your existing business, what would be the top 3 things you would prioritize?
3 things. First, the biggest one is just like get out of your own way. When I started out on my own in sort of late 2015, I just could not understand the information that I had in my head would be of any value to anybody else. Because you just think that everything I know, and they know, and she knows, and he knows, and they know. So that's a really, really big thing. It's like, don't underestimate the value of what's in your head, because someone said to me once, as a consultant, you only need to know one more thing than your customer. You will know 1,000 things more than your customer. Yeah, sure, you will meet some customers who know more than you, but they won't become a customer. Go and find the customer that needs the information that you've got in your head, which I guess leads to number 2. Just become really, really clear on who you can serve. What is the purpose genius that you have, and who is that person that needs that? Because certainly for me, in my first probably couple of years, I kind of kissed a lot of frogs, went down some little alleyways and like, oh, actually, this is going to be really poor. This is going to be bad work that they're not going to value, that they don't really want. Okay, this isn't going to be great for anyone. But don't devalue that, because there is value in working out as much what you don't want to do and what you can't do as there is in instinctively knowing, kind of what you will do. And I guess the third thing would be this comes from a mate of mine, Carl. You are not your customer's decision maker. So before you presume that the customer, so you've identified you've got some information, you've identified who you think can see value in that information. The third big piece would be you're not your customer's decision maker. So how dare you look at their website and kind of presume that they wouldn't want to have a conversation with you? So just have more conversations with more people, because what's really I guess frighteningly true is the more conversations you have with people, the more likely you are to get some business. And if those are the right people who you can serve really well, and you've got something of value for them, amazingly, you get work.
Amazingly.
Amazing. It's like, oh, look at that. They actually value what I want, and they're willing to pay me some money. But yeah, that's self-confident, but it's so hard, particularly when you are the business,
Yeah.
all the mental BS that you carry about yourself just comes into the business. And so get a good coach to help you, like in that first 6 to 12 weeks, just to get all of that stuff out of your head. I probably waited 2 years before I invested in that. And it was probably 2 wasted years where, I could have got there a little bit quicker. But don't underestimate the power of the journey. There's stuff that you learn, like I say, by going down dead ends, and that's part of life.
Absolutely. So speaking of which, I believe you've got an offer or something to share with the group.
Why
today.
not? Yeah. So I figured, in terms of the audience you're talking to, what better thing to offer than a 90-minute introduction to individual purpose? So I figured, look, we'll do a 90-minute session, which basically outlines, what purpose is, what purpose isn't, get some really specifics on the benefits of purpose for you as an individual, and really just give you the high-level view of how you can start connecting to more purpose in your life. And I guess finish off by just helping you, because one of the key things really is to find out where meaning exists today. Because if you can tap into that, that'll help you work out where you go next. So that's, this 90-minute workshop will leave you understanding exactly what purpose is and how to connect to it a little bit more deeply in your life today, to then give you that pathway forward. So we'll put links somewhere.
Somewhere here.
Somewhere around here. Everyone knows it. You know what happens. There'll be a link somewhere.
Thanks so much for that, Tim. It's a really generous, very generous offer, and very generous with your tips and tricks that you've given us today around purpose as well.
I'd be the good guy on purpose if I was like, no, you can't have the information. And no, I won't help.
Loving your purpose. I love it.
Yeah.
So I've always said I'm a marketer, not a salesperson, but the truth is we are all in sales. We enroll everyone in our lives every day to come at it from a place of purpose. For me anyway, makes it a whole lot easier, that's for sure. Have you defined your purpose? Are you confident in selling it? That 90-minute, not 90-day, that'd be super generous. 90-minute workshop with Tim will certainly help you achieve that.
Well, part of the end point is you write your first purpose statement. So, it won't be perfect. It won't be the best one you'll ever have. But for most humans, it's the first time they've ever actually sat down for 90 minutes and considered, what is my purpose? So that's not a bad place to start.
Yeah, great starting point. So as you'll have witnessed by now, all of our speakers have clarity and conviction around their purpose, and so must you. Tune in again tomorrow for another purpose-led discussion that helps us all shift the focus of business from profit for a few to prosperity for many. I'll see you then.